Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Today, our guest is Fabien Truong. Hello and welcome. You are a sociologist and a lecturer at Paris 8 University. Your latest book, Radicalized Loyalties, is an investigation into the reasons why radical Islam is thriving in France's run-down, crime-ridden suburbs known here as the banlieue. Now, the first question I want to ask you is that this investigation started, or at least it starts in the book, with a very special evening. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I mean, the first time I went to Grigny, which is the hometown of Amédi Coulibaly, was the November 13th, 2015. So a very special day in French history, I guess, because that was the day of the Bataclan attacks. So, and I went there to basically help out an association who was dealing with the aftermath of the January 2015 attacks, because Amédi Coulibaly was a boy from this particular neighborhood, and in many ways you could argue that this town and the inhabitants of the town were doubly struck by the attacks, and they were trying to understand what was going on. And I'd been called with a colleague as a sociologist to try to help them out, to look at messages, and so we've been working all days reading out messages that inhabitants from Grigny had posted after the 2015 January attacks, and talking about Amédi Coulibaly throughout the whole day. And for the first time, I was listening to things I've never heard before, because they were obviously depicting the guy next door, the friend, the guy who was hanging out down the streets, and so on and so on. So you had obviously a different portrait of this person. And then what happens, which leaves sort of everybody shell-shocked, I guess. Plus, I've lost a friend in the Bataclan attack, so I felt really like I should do something about it. So I think there was a sort of a drive to try to understand, and that's how it all started, really.
But just for our viewers, when you read the book, you realize that basically people are kind of stuck with Amédi Coulibaly. You say that they won't use the word, terrorist or attack, or they kind of stick with their pal at the end of the day. What did you discover that evening? What were people saying?
Yeah, well, they're shell-shocked because a lot of them didn't see that coming, or at least that's what they were saying to me to start with, because then obviously I spent more than 2 years in this neighborhood. So then obviously after a while, people start to open up a bit more. But really the main thing was like, we do not understand, and they could not put the friendly guy next door, the guy who was really helping a lot of people out, the guy as well who had a heavy delinquent past, and he was known as well for his brutality in some aspects of his life. So, and what was quite interesting from my point of view is to talk with people who had different relationship with Amédi Coulibaly. So they were basically telling them their Amédi, and what you realize is the different, basically the different social beings in sort of different scenes that it was. And once you start to gather all the pieces together, you maybe have a better understanding of what's going on, and you can realize as well the big discrepancy between what Amédi Coulibaly was trying to show off in becoming a terrorist and the reality of his life. Because in many ways you could argue that by becoming a terrorist and by even changing his name, he's just shouting to the whole wide world, I've changed, I'm different, I'm better, and I'm better than you in many ways. But if you look at what he's been doing and what he's done actually to manage to do those attacks. I mean, he actually been doing what he's been doing for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, that's what you say in your book. You say he used a lot of skills that he'd used previously to rob banks, to attack people, etc. The organization, the secret, the way he managed his whole business as a criminal, because he was a criminal. He was in prison multiple times. So just for our viewers, this was not the first time, obviously, you were going into what we call in France les banlieues, which are these neighborhoods which are quite violent and outside large cities. Here, Paris. You were a teacher as well in Seine-Saint-Denis, which is this area north of Paris where there are many of these big cités, these places where there are these big buildings and where there is also a lot of crime. So in this book, you basically you speak to 6 people, 6 youths, some of which were your students 10 years ago. So what sets your work apart from what other people have been saying, the media have been saying, for example, about these neighborhoods or colleagues?
Yeah, well, the big thing is that, because your first question was, when did it started? I could argue that it started 10 years ago. And what I think is quite different is to come back, come back, which is a very different approach to, like, let's say, journalism, when you just come and you come once, and in many ways you just what you're going to observe is a sort of a show, a spectacle, especially because all the youth that lives in the suburbs, they're really, really aware that their object of discourse is that they're spoken of. They're aware of basically stigmatization and it's the big stigma that they represent. So when you stigmatize, you react to this stigma and you put on a show, basically. So I would argue that with this ethnographic approach, which is, because it's not only coming and coming back, but as well is following people over a long period of time. So which allows you to basically look the discrepancy as well in between what is said, what is done, as well as the changes in what it says, because you can say something one day and 2 years later have a very different opinion. Or on the same day, you can say something to your mom and something to your partner in crime and something different to your girlfriend, for example. So in many ways, by taking the time, you can gather those information. The other thing is that obviously you need to build a trust relationship with the kids and all the people that are in the book. And
in order to manage to get the actual, to the core of what they are, is that?
But maybe surprisingly enough, it's not that difficult to get this trust as long as you're sharing your goodwill. I mean, basically, when I'm going down there, I'm just saying, I used to be a teacher in the suburbs. I know quite a bit of the suburbs, but I actually don't know anything. And even just that simple posture, I'm a teacher, but I don't know anything, and I'm here to listen to you, and I want to learn from you. So, well, it's a good start to start a conversation, I guess.
As far as what the conclusions you've drawn are, why, in your opinion, do these youths choose to go into Islam and radical Islam?
Well, basically, Islam and religion and is a medium to answer to metaphysical questions. I mean, a lot of these youth are touched by death and violent death from their mates, so it's quite a big thing, and we do not deal with this as a society. So they find some answers into religion. I would argue as well there's some metaphysical questions. Why do I heal? Why do I get my hands dirty? That's a big thing. Some questions related to intellectuality, aesthetics, as well. Politics. I mean, Islam as a political floating imaginary is political narrative discourses, and it basically fills a void. So I'm not sure we have the time to develop it, but all these big questions, they're questions that could be addressed by other social institutions, by other things than just religion. And in many ways, if Islam and religion has kind of taken the symbolic monopoly on all these issues, is because it may be the only thing that remain.
You say in your book also that this is, in the beginning when there is this conversion, or you call reconversion to Islam by these young men usually, they will be on show in the first place. Yeah. And then there will be a transition towards something deeper. Can you tell us 2 words about that? I mean, and the fact that Amidou Coulibaly, according to this, what you say in your book, was at the peak of his show. This was the grand finale at the end of the day. But he actually never made that move towards day-to-day, abiding by the rules of Islam.
Yeah, basically at the point where young men discover religion, because it's like a discovery, there's really this idea of like being a new person, reborn. So that's why it's an act of conversion. I'm a different person, I'm better, I'm cleaner, and actually I'm even better than you. So there's a lot of excess. And why there's a lot of excess? Because it's this sort of great excitement of, basically washing everything away and going towards a different direction. But as well, you're just a beginner, so you don't know much about religion. And so that's why as well you're putting this big show to protect yourself. Well, the norm is to leave the show, because you cannot live on a permanent show. I mean, because you get angry with everybody, you get upset with your parents, with your friends, and so on and so forth. And as well, you kind of put yourself apart from your previous social relationships. So the norm is that in time, step by step, you leave the show, and then suddenly, you open up, and then religion finds another place amongst other social commitments. But for few of the kids who remain in the show, and actually most of the time it's the same profile. It's the teenager, or the young man. It's not even teenager. That's mainly the main problems. Men turning in their late 20s, early 30s, they feel stuck because they've been in that same sort of petty crime environment for so long that they cannot see another kind of life, and they feel stuck. And because they feel stuck, as well, they become good at what they're doing. So in many ways, leaving the show has got heavy costs.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. If you want to know more about radical Islam in the French banlieue, in these rundown neighborhoods, well, I invite you to read this very interesting book. There's a lot of things in there which are worth discovering, and it really is a delve into this universe. The book will be out in the UK in April, and it will be out in the US in May, and it's a compelling read. Thank you for watching. Do stay on France 24. More news coming up.
France 24, c'est la richesse de la diversité culturelle mondiale, avec un réseau de correspondants à travers la planète.
En France 24 en español comunicamos a Latinoamérica con el mundo entero.
روح مهنية شعارها واحد، حرية التعبير. هذه هي بصمة France 24.
Africa on France 24 is about its people and their stories.
Los ciudadanos nos cuentan cuáles son las iniciativas y las problemáticas que tienen en sus comunidades a través del programa Los Observadores. Eso los acerca aún más a France 24.